Hello and welcome to the AV Forums podcast for the 16th of October 2013. And joining me on this edition are AV Forums Assistant Editor Steve Withers.
You know, Mrs. Buttman, you need a license to buy a dog, to drive a car, hell, you even need a license to catch a fish. For let any butt-reaming asshole be your father.
Games Editor Mark Butteright.
I can't do this. This is too intense.
Movies Editor Simon Crust.
Your mouth used up all the power.
And Audio Reviewer and New Dad, Ed Selly.
Men say that, they all say that, then they come.
So Ed, give us the good news.
Well, yes, as you say, I find myself a dad. As the previous podcast insinuated, I wasn't able to attend that because things were starting to get into gear. And 2:16 on PM on Wednesday, I took delivery of a boy. Figuratively speaking, my wife did the tricky bit, as we were saying earlier on. He's called William. He seems to be by far and away the most chilled of the three of us at the moment. He's a handsome chap. He seems very chilled, and I'm sure that at some point during this podcast, you'll probably hear him make a small sort of noise as he's carried past to have his nappy changed. But yes, it's all good news, and onwards and upwards from here.
Well, congratulations from us on the team. And I'm sure the listeners will add their congratulations onto the podcast. And listeners, happy Monday. We kind of caught you out on this week. We had to go quickly. I was going to say we had to come quickly, but that would have been the wrong phrase.
Common mistake amongst older men, I believe.
But we're obviously off to see some interesting new product from Tuesday. So that's why the podcast has appeared early. So please enjoy. And we're going to move on to hardware news, and to make up for the lack of 4K news on last week's podcast, it was the first podcast of 2013 where the words 4K were not used at all. Wow. Steve, you have LG 65-inch LA970 UHD TV.
I do feel, in fact, we were hoping to have a bit more 4K this month. Ideally, someone other than me talking about it, but unfortunately, Mark's not available because Mark's got the 65-inch F9000 from Samsung, which we've already reviewed the 55-inch. So I guess he'll be giving his opinions on that at a later date when he can make a podcast. Yes, I've got the LG 65-inch LA970 in for review. We've so far seen Sony and Samsung. So this is the latest in a string of 4K TVs that are hitting the market with Toshiba and Philips to come. Oh, and Panasonic as well. It's actually got to say it's the only 4K, because one thing you need to remember about 4K TVs is they're all basically LCD TVs. So a lot of the limitations of LCD come into play here, specifically those that are using edge LED lighting. And on a 65-inch screen, that can be an issue because it's a big piece of real estate to light up with LEDs at the edge. Now, the LG uses a full array backlight. So it's not using edge lighting, it's got a full array backlight. And that does make a big difference on a screen this size. It means you've got a very nice, even backlight. Quite impressive black levels too, especially when you're using the local dimming. However, and this is always the case I've experienced to date when it comes to full LED arrays, is that sometimes on camera pans across uniform fields, like a field or a sky or something like that, you can sometimes see the array itself behind, so in the form of banding, which is kind of one of the downsides of the technology, really. But other than that, I've got to say it's an impressive TV. It's big, obviously, given the screen size, but surprisingly heavy for an LCD TV. It caught me by surprise when it arrived because the guy had left in the van and I thought I could put it up easily on my own, and it nearly killed me moving this thing. It was so heavy. And the reason it's quite heavy is it's got quite a lot of speakers built into it, and by that I mean decent sized speakers. In fact, when I first turned it on, I could hear this noise, like something mechanical moving, and I thought, what the hell is that? After a few hours I realized that what effectively amounts to a soundbar descends down beneath the screen, and between the sort of the feet, because it's kind of a lot panel wide stand with a space, and then into this space descends a soundbar basically, which is quite a good idea. And the audio on this TV is quite good, surprisingly good, and I think that's one of the reasons is because they've employed this kind of rather unique approach to delivering TV sound. Other than that, it's very much other than the soundbar and the full LED backlight array, is basically the same as the Samsung and Sony's we've seen so far. If you've got any 4K content, it looks spectacular. There is some content that LG gave me just for testing purposes, travelogue footage, that kind of stuff, the usual kind of thing you get. It looked great. You could clearly see it was high resolution than 1080p, although having said that, 1080p does look very nice upscaled onto the 4K panel. So overall, so far, I've been very impressed. It's been a really impressive TV. The only thing it doesn't have, and again, I think this is a genius idea from Samsung, is their One Connect box, which makes it very easy for them to upgrade to a sort of a newer version of HDMI. I know there's been HDMI 2.0 announced, which the Panasonic has. It looks to me, looking into it in more detail recently, that it's a bit of a fudge. And I'm suspecting there'll be some other, obviously a version 2.1, 2.2, whatever, coming along the line. And from that perspective, Samsung's idea of having a separate connection box is actually very clever, because it makes it pretty straightforward for them to upgrade it. With the LG and with the Sony, it might require something else, either a changing of the HDMI board or something else in order to upgrade it to a higher HDMI format. No, that's not right. A higher HDMI. I'm trying to think of the word, Phil.
Version.
Speed.
Banana.
Upgrading it to a higher.
Put any word in there, nobody cares.
Upgrading it to a higher HDMI version. But so far, so good. I really like it. It's an impressive TV. I'm always amazed at. I think we talked about this last week. How quickly technology has moved on, and how cheap it's got. And 4K never has this been truer than with 4K, where suddenly within the space of a year we've gone from having nothing to having a number of TVs on the marketplace at surprisingly reasonable prices.
I was going to ask, Steve, do you know the cost of that one? Because I was in a well-known shopping store this morning, and I saw the Sony for £3,200.
The 65 inch? 55
No, 55. But then next door to it was that curved OLED LG thingy, which is just a fantastic picture, but looks absolutely ridiculous. £7,000. So if you have a 4K telly and a curved 1080p telly, one is 3,200 and one is 7,000. Where do you spend your money?
Yeah, one's LED based and the other is OLED with far superior picture quality, but it's curved.
Yeah.
The curving bit's not such an issue. I think, what Phil says is right. We're talking about a 4K TV. Yes, it's got a high resolution, but ultimately what it is an LCD panel with an LED backlight. And that technology has certain advantages and it has certain disadvantages. Whereas OLED, obviously, is a completely new technology. And hopefully we'll be seeing one quite soon to give you a full opinion. But certainly from what I've seen at shows, and I'm sure Phil will back me up here, and maybe what you saw in the store today, Simon, the picture quality is absolutely spectacular, because you've got absolute black and a very bright image, incredibly wide dynamic range, incredibly fast response time, so motion handling looks really good. I mean, this is clearly the future of television. That ain't going to come cheap. I personally think that £6,999 for an OLED TV is actually quite reasonable. You'd have paid 10 grand for a 42-inch flat panel standard definition TV 10 years ago. So
10 years ago, 2013. I mean, admittedly, it was a terrible screen, but thinking back to my heady days at Richer Sounds, we got some sort of LG panel in. It was £2 grand. Admittedly, that didn't include speakers, tuner, or stand, but it's still it's been a bit quicker than that. But I take the sentiment. I remember when we were selling Panasonic PW4s for sort of 7 or 8K, and they've got the same resolution as CFAX.
Well, I mean, obviously we've been talking quite a bit about 4K on the podcast. The guys have seen them for review. If you're lucky enough and live in a large urban area like Simon, your large retailers might have them in, so you can go and have a look. But the vast majority of AV Forum members are yet to see 4K TVs, and definitely yet to see 4K projectors. And we're having an event on the 23rd of October, thanks to Sony. They're holding their press day that day to show off the VW500 4K projector. And after the press are kicked out, AV Forum's members can attend that and get hands-on with Sony's new 4K projector. So you'll be able to see some native 4K footage on that, as well as play about with some Blu-rays and all the rest of it. So if you're interested in attending that, it is in central London. Nothing we can do about the location. It is Sony that's inviting AV Forum members along. So if you're in London on the 23rd of October, you fancy going along 6:30 till 8:30 in the evening, then go to the Projector Forum. There is an RSVP link in the thread in there. Send your email through, book a place, and be quick, because it's first come, first served for that one. So that's 23rd October. Go along, see the new Sony VW500, and who knows, you might even get a look at the new high-end model. It's not on the list, but you never know, it might turn up. And to wrap up on hardware, more rumours about Panasonic pulling out the plasma market. And I've got to say, I'm not surprised with this. It's been ongoing for about a year now that this was going to happen. I think a lot of it is messages, the message being misinterpreted. Obviously, they have stopped R&D into plasma. We know that. We got told that by the CEO at CES back in January. They are going to concentrate on OLED technology. That's where they see the future. So they're stopping development of plasma, but they're not stopping plasmas on the market. However, this latest rumour adds a little bit more smoke to the fire, Steve, and it wouldn't surprise me if next year's models are the last.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it logically, I mean, obviously it makes sense that they would stop R&D because plasma is a very mature technology. You kind of wonder, having seen this year's models, I mean, between the ST, the GT, the VT and the ZT, and you kind of think, well, where can they possibly go? I mean, they are pretty much at the zenith of plasma technology right now. They're some of the best TVs we've ever reviewed. You know, you could say, okay, well, Pioneer were there 4 years ago, but look what happened to them. They pulled out of the market. You get to this point, you're thinking, well, is there anywhere for them to innovate or improve it? So do they just continue with the current lineup until they've sold them all into next year? Or do they launch an entirely new range with the costs that are associated with that? You know, well, if they just, you know, sell, because I've noticed that they've been selling the ZT for like less than 3,000 something, a lot less than it was originally listed at. It feels like they almost they're clearing stock and emptying, and maybe, you know, they're retooling the factories for OLED production, and we have seen that maybe this is the last year of plasma from Panasonic.
To be honest, I don't think it's the last year. There will be a lineup at CES. We're too far into the year for them not to do that now. So there will be a new lineup. There won't be any innovation on there, I don't think.
So why not just keep selling what you've already made then?
Because then it becomes old stock, and people think, well, where's the new ones? Oh, well, that's an old model now, and they're obviously not going to replace it, so I'm not going to buy it. They will come out with new model numbers, I can guarantee that. There will be a lineup next year of plasma, but
like one high and one budget, or an ST and a VT.
Something like that, but they won't just stop it just like that. There's no way they're going to do that, and they certainly haven't said that they're going to do that. And when asked about the Reuters story this week, they haven't said that they are pulling out, but then again, they haven't said that they are.
Yeah, well, I've read a lot of press releases in my time as a banker, and I can tell you that was someone dodging the subject. I would why if they're not making any money on plasma production, then stop it. You know, this is a business at the end of the day. You know, they're not here as altruistic, you know, nature to try and provide TVs for enthusiasts. They're here to make money. If no one's buying plasmas and it's costing them more money to make them, as Pioneer discovered, than it is to sell them, then they're just going to pull out. I mean, why continue with something that is now pretty much dead?
Fairly heartless, but fairly succinct way of looking at it. It must be said. Yeah, there's you know, beyond emotional attachment. You've got to look at this sort of logically. It's why on smaller scales in the audio industry, why a number of sort of more wholesale manufacturers given up making CD mechs. You know, a lot of what are ostensibly CD players making use of DVD and other basic mechanisms to get the job done. It sort of moves down the scaling until an organisation feels they can make a go of it at sort of scales and pricing that makes sense. And if that isn't Panasonic, then it might be somebody else. It might not.
I think if they were doing what you said they were doing, or what you think they're doing, Steve, they would have made an announcement like Pioneer did, and then get the rush on for people buying them up. They haven't made any announcement, so I don't see that. I see the VT70 next year. It will come. It'll be there at CES. There won't be any huge upgrades to it or anything like that, but it'll be a new model number for another year, and then you might see them pull out, because they've got 9 to replace it at the minute in their lineup. So they'd be kind of cutting their nose off to spite their face a little bit. Can you see them going to LED only? No, I can't. There'll be a new plasma line next year.
Well, like I said, I don't know what the actual sales numbers are, and I don't know how much it costs to produce them, and how much of the manufacturing plants being used for plasma production, how much it would cost to retool it. All I can say is that if this were the last year of plasma, it's been a hell of a good year.
But it's not, so you don't have to worry.
It's a real shame, though. I mean, that ZT is an awesome.
Well,
telly.
it's just a sign of the time, Simon, isn't it? I mean, we're moving on to new technology.
Yeah.
You look at the high street, LEDs, outselling plasma by some margin. I think
10-1 or something.
A huge margin.
10% of the market is plasma. The rest is LED, LCD. Yeah. But that's always going to be the way because it's far cheaper to make an LED, LCD TV. They're flooded in the marketplace. You can buy one at £100 all the way up to £6,000-7,000 for a 4K or whatever. But I don't see them pulling out straight away. I think if they were going to do that, they would announce it now, Steve, just to sell off the stock if that's what they were going to do. Because
to be fair, though, I mean, I can't. I was briefly looking at the archive, and it's a bit too complicated for me to do it. But at about the time when I joined the forum, so June 2003, it wasn't too long after that Panasonic announced that the PD30, I believe it was the last sort of big CRT that they were going to do, and there were all sorts of threads of people going, I'm going to get going to stockpile a 36, and because at that point the very first Viera panels and the PD6 or PWD6, whatever it was, there were arguments for and against whether it was actually a genuine step forward over a PD30 if you had one that was working properly, and that was a big if. I never managed it. So, I mean, I think we'll see the same thing again, whether it's this year or next year. But 10 years down the line, no one is seriously suggesting that the 36-inch CRT is genuinely missed. So, sentimentality aside, I think we'll make it.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen at one time or another. I think it's a bit premature to say it's going to happen right now. All I'm saying is we'll get another product line out of them. We're just too far through the year now for them to not do it and not make an announcement. And they were very cagey when asked this week, so they haven't said one way or the other. So reading between the lines,
if they did have something lined up, why not just say yes then?
They did have support lined up.
If they have a product lineup for next year, why not just say, of course we're going to have a product lineup in 2014? That'd be ridiculous. The response sounded like corporate sidestepping, and when there's so much rumor going around at the moment, it just seems like there's no smoke without fire. I just think maybe they've got something else lined up, because at the end of the day, if they're not making money on them, then why do it? If they're going to physically lose money on another lineup of plasmas, then I can see as a head of a company absolutely no reason for doing that. That's just in a company that's already in huge trouble in its TV division, and there's also rumours about them shutting it down entirely, which could conceivably happen since they make a lot more money on other things. So
remind me not to do a podcast on a Sunday, because you're just a miserable sod on a Sunday, Steve.
I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
You really are. Go and have a beer and cheer up.
If they've got a 4K OLED to launch next year, then screw the plasma. Why not just go?
I mean, bring it on. I'm not saying let's hang on to plasma because it's the best technology out there. It's clearly not. But it's a bit late in the year. I mean, we're October now. CES is 6, 7, 8 weeks away. It's too.
That's sober.
Unless they want to soften the blow of announcing they're pulling out by announcing something else at the same time.
They might do that, but I don't see them pulling out straight away. And you've got to imagine that actually when they release a new, and they learnt this a couple of years ago, when they run out of stock, there will be stock to shift. And if I was them and I was killing it off, the first thing I say is, we're killing this off, so if you want one, you better go and get one now. Because that's what Pioneer did, and the
but they had the Curo, didn't they? They had the best of the best of the best at that time. Said, this is it. This is the best we're going to do. That's your lot. Thank you and good night. Panasonic don't yet have that. I mean, I know they've got the ZT, but they haven't flagged it up as much, has it?
Yeah, well,
you know what I mean?
Well, that is it. They're not gonna bring out another top end TV. That is it. That's their pinnacle of, this is it. This is plasma. It won't get better than this.
I think that's why they did it too. I think they made the ZT this year as the last hurrah of plasma.
Yep.
It was their final throw of the dice to say, right, we can top Pioneer once and for all. And in all fairness, I think they did. In my opinion, having had one in for review, it's an amazing television. Having said that, the VTs, that's pretty good too. And also you get the bigger screen size too as well.
Yep. So we'll just have to wait and see. And like I say, CES is not that far away, which is quite scary, actually. So we will find that out. So that kind of wraps up hardware news. Don't forget, you can see that Sony projector 23rd October. Go to the Projectors Forum, look out the thread, and if you can make it along Central London, get your email in and snap up a place, because it is a first come first serve basis. Stop yawning, Steve. We're going on to games news next. Right, so moving on to games news. 500 grand in your pocket if you play GTA 5 online and you had all the problems and all the rest. Have I got that right, Mark? They're going to give everybody 500 grand for hookers and drugs?
Not necessarily for those, but
Real money?
No.
They're going to give everyone £500,000 for hookers and what? What did you say?
Blow.
Have you ever played GTA, Simon?
No.
That's pretty much what you're spending the money on.
This is why this sounded particularly good. I might go out and buy it.
That's not 500,000 real dollars, I should point out.
Oh, okay.
No, it's in-game currency. It's dubbed their stimulus package. 250,000 GTA dollars deposited into your in-game bank accounts. It's been indicated that it's to kind of make up for the early issues and connection problems, people losing saved characters and progress with amassing money in game. But it's probably, stimulus package is probably in fact the right term, in that it seems more designed to get the economy moving. There's no such thing as in-game quantitative easing, but if there was, this would kind of be it, because the game's kind of built around the idea of amassing money, buying things, and that's how Rockstar planned to be able to sell you in-game money for real money. So you could buy a certain amount of GTA dollars and then, purchase car modifications or an apartment or a garage and that kind of thing. The problem is that a lot of the amounts that you get for doing things in the game are quite low. So therefore, I think there are a large proportion of people, I would bet, that are simply amassing money. They're simply like in the real world, like a stalled economy. No one really wants to do anything because they're scared they're going to be a little bit poorer because you lose money for dying, say. So everyone's kind of stockpiling cash. There isn't a great deal of spending going on for people in the early levels. And the worry would be, from Rockstar's point of view, that people will simply turn off. That, in fact, leaving your kind of real world to go into a game to kind of work hard, to amass money, to kind of, basically replicate real world issues.
That sounds rubbish, frankly.
Yes, exactly. Driving around, realizing that you can't afford a property, this kind of thing, losing money. Yeah.
Not getting laid on a regular basis.
Presumably, somebody somewhere is going to be monitoring this as an actual sociological experiment, just to see what happens if you actually do this form of bailout in reality.
I would love to know. Yeah,
in the same way that obviously, after the corrupted blood plague of Warcraft, and after people became obsessed with keeping it in game, and they've become a study for how terrorist cells operate. Actually quite an accurate study of how terrorist cells operate. The only question I've got, I don't know if you know this, Mark, is do in-game prices suffer from inflation, or are they fixed?
I think they're fixed. And so
in other words, we can't honestly replicate the issue that would prevent the government saying, right, we're going to stimulate the economy by giving you each 10 grand.
No, but it does.
Can players buy from other players within the online world?
You can gift money to people, and you can kind of kill someone and take a bit of money. But it does kind of replicate.
Sell on the house to another player, then.
Yeah.
See, that could.
I don't know.
Facilitate inflation, couldn't it?
Yeah, I think.
What am I missing here? GTA, Grand Theft Auto.
That's a long list, mate.
Yeah, this is the game where you drive around, shoot and kill people. Yes. Why the hell are we talking about buying houses?
Simon,
you go and steal a house. Is this the same game? Am I? Where am I? What's going on?
How do you steal a house, Simon?
You go in and kill the people, and the house is yours.
Go in, kill the people. You can then
own the house.
Pay their mortgage.
No, it's not owning a house.
I just don't get it.
But the police will come round and they'll evict you.
Right. Oh, right, okay.
Just evicting.
I was
I
going to
think
say,
you
I
get
think
locked
they're a
up.
bit harsher than that.
Yeah.
They'll probably shoot you.
But the good news is that being
Yeah,
dead,
it's called squatting, Simon. It's not really owning a house, is it? You're just squatting in someone else's, and you've committed murder as well. So you might
with
get
their
an armed response
corpses
to that.
lying in the utility room.
Apparently, a friend of mine told me that I think there's an app for GTA 5 where if you do speed in the game, you get sent a speeding ticket. Email.
So like we joked last week that actually
Yeah, like we
has
did last week, but for real. Only the idea is to encourage you to go faster in the game. Like you get like 150 mile an hour speeding ticket. Right, I can do better than that.
Anyway,
It's only a hop, skip, and a jump until you're at sort of EVE Online, where you are basically paying to replicate the entire capitalist drudgery of your life, but in a computer game. I mean, that's just magnificent.
So I'd play a computer game just to sit at a computer,
Lonely.
working on a database in a computer game.
Someone needs to combine these sort of dynamic environments, but yeah, instead of going out to try and make it big by committing ever more ambitious crimes, it's like you just got to stagger off down to the Job Centre Plus, and they hook you up using, and then you can be a train driver using the simulator, using that Microsoft train simulator, and every single day you have to sign in and drive a train. And then life will be complete. We were actually created our own Matrix. It would be fantastic. I mean, if you wanted to encapsulate how to stop children playing computer games, just remove the hope and excitement.
Make them really boring and hopeless and soul destroying like real life. We should happily prepare them for what lies ahead, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, well, you were talking about making investments on housing and stuff, Steve. Do you think you're going to be better in a computer game than you are in real life?
I hope not. Still paying off the last load.
Anyway, Mark, we were saying GTA 5.
If I could shoot a few ex-wives, that'd be nice. Go in prison for a long time.
Yeah, but you could buy The Rock and
Turn him into my sex.
You,
bitch.
Vin Diesel, and The Rock.
Yeah.
One mission.
Yeah.
One
It's a video game
ex-wife.
that would sell quite well. Just a very specific market, obviously.
And you could have two blokes killing each other in front of you. Yeah.
Yes, I found that. Again, that's a video game that would definitely sell. You should put a scan in your face and all your friends' faces, and then put them into the game, and then kill each other.
Well, you're going to be able to do that.
Would this count as evidence-based testimony?
only as far as the Red Cross are concerned. Clearly, I'll be indicted for war crimes in a video
So
environment.
at this moment in time, I'll just say hello to the guys at GCHQ. Thanks for downloading and listening.
If you are listening, flash my lights on and off.
Hey, a bit scary. Someone just turned the light on. Oh dear.
Right.
So,
Anyway.
Mark, what were you saying?
I think that's been suitably covered.
Okay, well, is that all the games news?
It's a bit more about them being.
Yeah, a little bit kind of money related in that Take-Two Interactive and Rockstar have been hit with a cease and desist letter from hip-hop artist and producer Daz Dillinger. Now, I'm wandering into a realm which I'm gleefully ignorant, but apparently he is someone, and he's not just someone looking for a quick payout. Basically says they've used a couple of his songs without his express consent. They offered him what he considered a trivial amount of just over $4,000 for the pair of them. He said no, but the game went ahead. He's basically asking for them to get rid of all unsold copies, which, as I think we all know, is never going to happen, and it's not going to be. They're not going to stop selling it. It's simply going to be a case of, does he actually own the rights? Because kind of 90s hip hop, I think there was a lot of signing over of rights from particular artists to companies. So it's a question of, does he still own the rights? If he does, then he's looking at a pretty hefty check. But given that the game's amassed, over $1 billion, I think that's fair enough.
If he's a hip hop star, somebody will bump him off. They don't have to worry.
In real life or in the game?
Oh, in the game.
I can't tell
There's
it.
going to be a mod, isn't there, with him in the mod, and he's going to get shot.
And before we wrap up on games, Mark, Games Podcast this week, what will you be discussing?
Unsurprisingly, lots and lots of opinion about Grand Theft Auto 5. Takes pretty much centre stage.
And that's it.
Grand Theft Auto Online, mentioned a bit about the Steambox. Now that we've seen the specs for it, also some of the guys derided the controller, but they're obviously wrong about that. And also the Battlefield 4 beta.
So that's the Games podcast out 14th of this month, Monday. Same day as this podcast, actually. So once you finish listening to this, you can go and download the Games podcast and enjoy the guys talking about GTA 5. Right, moving on. We're going to talk tech next.
I wouldn't bother finishing listening to this.
We haven't finished recording yet. It could be an absolute classic. Probably not, but it could be.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm playing the odds here, Phil.
Playing the odds.
If all else fails, we'll talk about what was it? Theodore Rex. We'll talk about that. That'll get them in.
Or we'll invent a fictitious currency for AV forums and just give 500,000 of it to each listener. Don't know what they'll spend it on, but
and they can send in an application for a mortgage. They can get a
oh yeah, we could have an in-game game where they can work on our new database.
For virtual money, they can get virtual money which they can spend on AV forums.
So moving on to tech news and a story from the Telegraph this week. Days lost to slow PCs. This report making out that every year workers lose 5.5 days because their computer is slow. Quite a one-sided article, this one, because in my experience, it's more the worker that's slower than the computer.
Well, yeah, I think they lose 5.5 days to slow computers and about 6.5 months to messing around on Facebook and YouTube and everything else that's on the computer.
Yeah, I've got to say, I mean, whilst the laptop I do the podcast on is now very, very old indeed, and I was cutting it a bit fine today by getting it sort of up and running about 5 minutes before we kicked off proceedings. But yeah, even thinking back to when I was working on print magazines, where you're like moving massive images around in InDesign and things like that, most of the time the sluggishness was me failing to sub and check my copy correctly rather than the computer not knowing what to do. But it's a good excuse to give yourself more time to spend on Facebook and other tat, isn't it?
But isn't that the problem? Running multiple applications, isn't that what slows a computer down?
It doesn't help.
Didn't help.
Yeah. So
Windows update.
Windows update, yeah.
That's
Fighting.
It's because everyone's using PCs and Windows. If they all moved to Apples, they'd be fine. Macs will cost.
I'm sorry, I vehemently disagree with that. It's not that. It's as I say, I've used both extensively. They just find different ways to lose you a bit of time. So it's 6 one, half a dozen of the other. Let's not pretend that the beach ball of despair is not something that Macs can't spend a bit of time doing.
In my experience of working in corporate Britain and corporate companies, if Microsoft had gotten rid of Solitaire from Windows, it would save masses of time.
One day I'll learn to play Minesweeper as well.
I used to play that a lot.
Yeah.
Learn? I've never. I don't know. I don't understand it.
I'd walk in with documents to get typed up for court, and she'd be sitting there saying, "I'm really busy. I don't think I can meet the deadline." And she's sitting there with the screen open, and it's got Solitaire on it.
I certainly have wasted quite a bit of time mucking around with Minesweeper in the past.
I don't know. Desktop Tower Assault's where it's at. That's just brilliant.
I've never heard of that. What's that?
I forewarn you. I don't want to go any further into Desktop Tower Assault because you've got a database to update, and you won't if you go and experiment with Desktop Tower Assault. It's the most. It's a second to learn, a lifetime to master. Basically, you've got to defend a tower against waves and waves of oncoming little men. It just works on an internet browser portal. And
that's the thing of throwing stuff at them, is it? Is that the one?
Yeah, and you get different and more ornate ways of defending the stuff.
Yeah.
It's
an awful game, an awful game, but so good.
I mean, obviously, as you know, I mean, I haven't found all these strange corners of the internet quite by accident. I was never really in for solitaire, but that people who say I'm bored at work and you have a computer with access to the internet, I'm sorry, you're just not trying hard enough. There's a whole world of wonder out there.
Yeah, I must admit, it never ceases to amaze me how I can sit down at a desk and the next thing I know, 4 hours have gone and I'm, hang on a minute. What have I done?
You have nothing.
You look at one thing, then you go off on a tangent. Look at
you don't have to
another
tell me
tangent.
that. Yeah.
Oh.
But not for the last 2 weeks, eh, Steve?
Yeah.
No.
no, absolutely.
He called off on Friday. Oh, I need to review something because we've got Nang up on the site.
Didn't I?
Where's he from in this impression?
Clearly not the West
Land.
Country.
Yes, Steve, you don't sound very West Country. Let's put it that way. So moving on to wasting time at work, and moving on to probably one of the sloppiest bits of tech journalism I've ever read. iTunes Radio is coming. It's coming to the UK next year, or it might be early 2014. It might be late 2014, or it might not appear at all. That was the first paragraph.
No.
Yes.
No. It's, to be fair, it's now third paragraph, but you're absolutely right. I read verbatim. According to a report from Bloomberg, the plans are not public yet, which means that no official announcements out of Cupertino so far. Early 2014 could be changed to later 2014, or worse yet, not at all. Welcome to these bets have been hedged to each other.
So this is
In my old
basically
game, that was
making stuff
covering
up,
your arse.
isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's what's called in the police terminology, covering your arse. Basically, you've got all everything covered.
Yeah.
It's a non-story, basically. I mean, it's saying iTunes going to be the end of Spotify? Well, let's face it, iTunes Radio doesn't exist other than the US, and Spotify does exist, and I use it every day, and I don't see any reason at this moment in time to worry about it.
So is it possibly an advertising gambit by Spotify just to wave the flag for themselves?
Well, I don't know. It doesn't. The article doesn't look that way out. The other thing is that at the moment, no one can say with any authority, given they can't say if it's coming or not. There's no clear information at all as to whether it's a completely user selection based exercise like Spotify, where it's like, I fancy sitting down and listening to Mechanical Bull by the Kings of Leon, delete is appropriate, or whether it's one of these, we've looked at your musical taste and here's a stream of songs you might like, which I personally don't get as a method of delivering me music. I'll find what I like. Thanks very much. Don't patronise me. So I don't even know which one it is. I mean, knowing Apple, the idea, I'm sure that they'll find some way. I mean, given it's based around iTunes, the world's most disappointing software, I'm sure that they'll find a way of taking the largest database of online music and finding a way of screwing it up so you can't just access it in a way that you see fit.
So
Well, I
now
use
that's
BBC
journalism.
I use the BBC iPlayer radio app anyway, which is great.
I don't use radio. I mean, I occasionally use the iPlayer radio app, especially if I want to catch up with something. But Spotify, it's not a case of it choosing music for me. I'll go on there and I'll select something to listen to based on either reviews that I've read, comments online, people just saying, have you listened to this? Or maybe I'm just feeling nostalgic and I want to listen to something I haven't listened to for the best part of 15, 20 years.
Working on the database, it's been 80s week here.
Wham.
Wham, Aha, Madonna, the Beatmasters, and
Ross.
And this is supposed to
bit of Ross, yeah.
this is supposed to make you work quicker, is it? Finish the database and you can stop listening to that shit.
To be
Yeah,
honest,
well, that's it.
I would be
It's
going on
torture, yeah.
slappers if it meant not having to listen to 80s Madonna. I'd just go.
The thing is, it's playing in the background. I'm not listening to it. Every now and again, a catchy one comes on, but
A catchy one. Like what? What's the catchy one? Go on, Phil.
New song by Howard Jones, anything like that.
yeah,
Nick
Yeah.
Kershaw.
yeah.
My
All
wife
that.
is.
I'll listen to all of that. Yeah, totally.
Well, good for you.
Goes to Hollywood, eh? Oh, yes.
Jan Hammer and what was the other one? Axel F and yeah. Reliving my youth.
He says as his dentures fall out.
Hang on, I'm not the oldest one here. I mean, you were a teenager in the 80s, weren't you, Withers?
Said very quietly.
I was 18, 1985.
Ah, did you have the haircut as well?
Oh, yeah, I had the lot, mate. Highlights, fully shirts, leather trousers, pixie boots.
I just
Flock of seagulls.
I can't picture him with
I never
hair.
did Flock of Seagulls. I was a big Duran Duran fan, so I modelled myself on John Taylor, mostly.
Because you use Stewie as your avatar, I've just always assumed that you were bald from birth.
I had a massive head of hair, like a young Bob Dylan when I was younger. I think excessive dyeing may have f***ed it up a bit.
I think we need pictorial evidence.
Off. Taking that to my grave.
You can buy that with AV Forums dollars. I want to see 80s Steve avatars everywhere.
Oh, that would be brilliant.
Withers says relax. Oh dear.
Weather says just say no.
His wishes he said no a few more times.
There's a world of regret encapsulated within that sentence.
Yep.
So, moving on to movie news. What's at the cinema, Steve?
Well, this week we have The Fifth Estate, which I guess everyone will probably know as the WikiLeaks movie. It suffers from two problems that I guess any film that's based on actual events suffers from, which is you don't know exactly how true it all is, because obviously you're seeing it from a specific perspective. I mean, the film is based upon two books, one written by one of the, not co-founders, because as it made it quite clear in the film, I mean, WikiLeaks is founded by Julian Assange, but there was a German guy who helped him out called Daniel Berg. And he was involved quite early on, and then had a big falling out. He wrote a book about it, so a lot is based upon his. So a lot of it's from his perspective, and with his bias. Now, the rest of it's based upon a book written by one of the Guardian journalists who worked alongside WikiLeaks on the big, when they launched all the stuff from the U.S. military plans in Afghanistan and the U.S. diplomatic cables, which is probably the thing that they're most famous for. So you've got to understand that it's obviously. Julian Assange is sitting on record as saying that it's not true. No, it's not true. It's not. It's not the whole story, etc. And he would say that. I guess he is portrayed as being a bit of a dick in the film, although brilliantly portrayed, as we said, by Benedict Cumberbatch. And I'm beginning to wonder if Benedict Cumberbatch is in every film this year, because I've seen him in at least 4.
He wasn't in Iron Man 3.
And he wasn't in Iron Man 3. He is in The Hobbit, though. He's doing the voice of Smaug, so we can look forward to that. But yeah, he seems to be he's a very busy man at the moment, Benedict Cumberbatch. He's very good in it, I have to say. He's very good as Julian Assange, but they do play him as a massive dick. Very self-centered, not literally a massive dick, I'd like to point out.
Has he got... What sort of film is this? WikiLeaks with a massive dick. Nice.
Yeah, they play him as very self-centered, very arrogant, very much out for himself, and difficult, particularly with the release of the diplomatic cables, because obviously there was lots of stuff in there that was sensitive information. A lot of informants' names were in there, and he did promise the Guardian and the other newspapers that he wouldn't release it without redactions, but he did. His argument being that we're about the truth and we don't want to redact anything. But I think he is putting people's lives at risk. And that was one of the reasons why he fell out with Daniel Berg. So, yeah, one problem is obviously you don't know how much of it is actually true. The other problem is when you're doing anything involving computers, it's how do you show it in a cinematic way without making it look like just blokes at terminals? And the director, Bill Condon, who made Dreamgirls and Gods and Monsters, which is a really great film, and then more recently has been wasting his time on Twilight films, I guess for the money. He does have a lot of sort of scenes where you see people like in a kind of quite... expressionist in a way, with rows and rows of desks and computers to try and sort of portray pictorially the internet, which kind of looks a bit stupid, frankly. I can see what you're trying to do, which is you're trying to make people at laptops look remotely interesting, because let's face it, it's not exciting, and so you have to do something in order to make it slightly more cinematic, and that's what he does in various times, with desks with names on the front and this sort of stuff to try and get the impression of different contributors and this sort of stuff. I'm not saying it's completely successful, but the film is it is an enjoyable movie and it is interesting, and you do get an insight perhaps into the workings of WikiLeaks itself and behind the scenes, and how that particularly their big sort of leak, if you like, of the documents from Afghanistan and the diplomatic cables, how that came about, how they work with the press. But it does what it does address quite well, I think, is how the world is changing, how the internet has fundamentally changed life completely. I mean, secrecy is now quite difficult. Policing the internet is almost impossible, though they are trying more and more. How does print journalism exist in the modern world? How does how do newspapers continue to exist? I mean, because their argument would be we don't just print information, we put it in context, which is certainly true and definitely not the case with WikiLeaks. But yeah, I mean, it certainly was an interesting film with a great central performance from Benedict Cumberbatch.
Sorry.
Go on, Steve, keep going. We're all listening. Oh, God.
Poor old Benedict. If you could see his back. Although I can't watch a film now without thinking about Ed's comment about it looks like a take. Every time I see him now, that's all I'm thinking. Poor guy. Anyway, it's an interesting film, and it's about, I think, an important subject.
Right, just for context here.
that being the important thing, as always.
Okay, so wrapping up quickly before we give the reasons why everybody's just burst out laughing. Steve, your scores out of 10?
7.
And I've got to say there was a documentary on over the weekend about this, which actually had interviews with Assange and also the Guardian reporter who was working with him and other people like New York Times and so on. Really interesting. Probably more interesting than the movie, to be honest.
I think it's a subject that would benefit. Yeah, I think it lends itself more to a documentary, I think, as long as it's an even-handed documentary than it does a film. Although you could say, well, whoever thought they could make a good film out of Facebook, but The Social Network actually is a really good movie.
Yeah, but it's completely fabricated, though, but it's a good movie. You know, there's very little truth in it.
When you're telling a story based upon reality or actual events, how much of it do you have to stick to the truth? How much can you stick to the truth, and therefore, maybe it's not that interesting or cinematic, or do you go off on a tangent and try and make it more interesting, and maybe just play loose and hard with the facts? I mean, I always think that one of the best beginnings of a film, technically based on a true story, is the beginning of Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, where it says most of what follows is true.
Buttercup.
Go on and Phil, explain why you lot are behind my beat. If only you could be so,
All right, for the benefit of people listening, going, "Oh my God, they've lost it." Some weeks ago, during another random fumble through the internet, I found the Benedict Cumberbatch name generator, which takes the fact that obviously you get lots of syllables to play with. So instead of that, you can have Snorkel Dink Vegemite, or Bouillabaisse Carrot Stick, Blubber Whale Mouldy Spore, or indeed the one that's just popped up now is Anal Lube Chicken Strips.
Steady on, Simon. Rinky Dink Curdle Snoot.
Some burner cockle tip. Blubber Dick Release Snatch.
Burger King Scratch and Sniff. So yes, sorry for undermining the
Congleton Crumplehorn.
Sorry for undermining the gravitas of that review. Although if Cumberbatch comes across as a dick in it, I think that's quite a good. Don't get me wrong, I do support some of the aims and intentions of WikiLeaks, but that doesn't stop me thinking that Julian Assange is a massive tit.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, the Guardian journalist in this documentary actually said, when he first met him, he wanted to trust him because he was such a nice bloke and blah, 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 and very trustworthy, and then he just turned into a monster. Complete and utter monster when he got his publicity. And then started lying and the done deals and all the rest of it, and he'd gone against all the deals done, and basically he was a dick.
And ultimately failed to protect his sources and subjects, although it makes clear in the film that the source kind of let him, outed himself because he's a bit of an idiot. I'm talking about the guy, the soldier that gave them all the information. And now I think's had a sex change. So, yeah.
Congleton chicken strips.
if you're not going to take this stuff seriously, I think I'm just going to go.
Well, Wellington Giggle Snort.
Yes.
Blubber Whale Camouflage.
Now, can I just say to the listeners, do you have any idea how hard it is to talk about a film while all you can see coming up are these names in front of you on the message board of Skype?
What I think is particularly mean is that
I hadn't seen the link.
If you keep clicking it, the longest one that comes up is his actual full name.
Wimbledon Ballsack Snip.
Candy Crush Temple Run.
Wellington Kryptonite. There's a good one. Movies based.
That's his porn star name.
Oh God.
Yeah, I thought you were going to have a heart attack there, Simon, at one point.
That was just mad. Just.
Honky Tonk Stinky Rash.
It's one of those great moments when you're not supposed to laugh, but you just can't help yourself.
Well, poor Steve's now stormed off.
I'm still here. But only in.
He's just not taking part. He's above all this, Okay, moving swiftly on. Lost Doctor Who episodes found. Simon, give us a bit of background into this.
A bit of background. Okay. In I think it was very, very early 70s, the BBC took to junking lots and lots of episodes because they broadcast them, they sold them to the various territories, and they didn't think they had any intrinsic value. And because tape was very, very expensive in those days, they wiped and reused the tapes. Doctor Who is probably the most high profile, but there were many shows.
How short-sighted was that on the part of the BBC?
Exactly. Unbelievable. Not only, but also Dudley Moore and Peter.
Loads of stuff's been lost forever.
Yeah, it's almost endless the amount of stuff that's gone and will never be found. As I said, Doctor Who is probably the most high profile because it's got a sort of fevered fandom, and they're trying to track down these episodes, and they've scoured all over the world. And over the years, many have turned up. One of the biggest ones, Tomb of the Cybermen, turned up 1990s, was it? Bashed straight out on VHS. A complete episode, one of Troun's, and it was the early ones that were gone. Most of Billy Hartnell's, Pat Troughton's, but a few of Bill Pertwee's as well were lost, although they exist in some format or another. The ones that are completely gone are completely gone. They just don't exist anywhere. Even there are some sound recordings, there are some video snaps, pictures taken from television screens, that kind of thing. And was it Friday? It was Friday, wasn't it? The biggest haul just about ever has been found. Almost two complete stories. The Web of Fear, which is a Pat Troughton one, and Enemy of the World, in which Pat Troughton plays two parts, the Doctor and the evil, the baddie. That's not a particularly good episode, I don't think. But the Web of Fear, the second appearance of the Abominable Snowmen, is an amazing story. Thought to be lost and to be found in Nigeria of all places. But of course, the BBC. Let's go back to Tomb of Cybermen, right? That was found, cleaned up, put onto VHS, and sold. Okay, sold to the general public. Yes, they're going to do that with this, but because of the way technology is advanced now, what they're doing is they're showing individual episodes on the iPlayer for a nominal fee, 89 pence per episode. And of course, all the avid fans are going, "Oh, this is great." But is it?
Hang on. We pay. How much is TV license now? 140 quid?
This is the point I'm coming on to. It's what, TV license 150 quid now, is it? I don't know. I don't pay mine. Oh, yes, of course I do. Is it 150 quid? Hold on.
I don't know. I pay monthly, and it's
I pay monthly £12 a month. Yeah, roughly.
I don't know how much it is, but you would think as
120 quid a year.
Yeah, you would think that they would broadcast this in one form or another, BBC Three or BBC Four. Even if it's just the once, but give people the opportunity to see it rather than having to buy it.
Absolutely. And bring it out on DVD. I mean, episode 1 of The Web of Fear has been available forever because it was never lost. So put the whole lot together as they do and get it out there.
You see, I think the BBC is just losing touch with what the BBC is supposed to be about. you know, what their charter says and all the rest. I mean, the other one recently was the Sky at Night, the longest running TV program, monthly TV program ever in the world, and they're getting rid of it. And what are they going to replace it with? Strictly Come Dancing hairstyles, or you know what I mean? It's like they've just lost touch completely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, they're a public broadcaster, and therefore they're supposed to cover certain segments of the market. That's part of their remit, which is fair enough. And I do agree that I think the Sky Night shouldn't be dropped. But you know, at the same time, there is a degree of commercial. They are, if people want to watch Strictly Come Dancing, and clearly they do in their millions. Not me personally. I couldn't give a damn, but 10 million I think they had last night. Last night. So. It's popular. So, and they are also, there to produce popular programming. I think personally think that the license fee is a bargain. I think the quality of programming you get from the BBC, and I'd pay that money just not to have to sit through bloody adverts, frankly. I think the BBC does a fantastic job. And as Simon said, they've also been at the cutting edge of technology as well for a long time, help push TV technology and technology generally. It's easy to bash the BBC, but compared to some, you and I, Phil, when we were sitting around in Vegas and put the TV on, how bloody awful is American network television? Advert breaks after advert break.
Yeah, well, the intro bumper on TV programs in the States are just so they can lead up to the first advert break.
Yeah, first advert break.
It's unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, I can see why people are crying out saying, well, come on, we pay a licence fee, at least shove it on BBC 4 or something like that.
Yeah.
Even if it's just the once, let us see it. So I understand that.
Yeah, well, my problem, I don't disagree with most of the sentiments being said here, but part of the problem is that since the original charter came along, the world's changed a little bit. And the problem is that the license fee is now being used, I don't believe maliciously or deliberately, but nonetheless is then now distorting other parts of the media. In so much as I think we can all agree that Rupert Murdoch and most other TV companies are big enough and grown up enough to look after themselves. And if they complain about unfair competition from the BBC, well, I'm sure that they'll manage. Where it starts to come into, where I start to have more problems with what the BBC sort of gets up to is, obviously, however, if you have a look, just do a search based on BBC on the App Store, the number of apps that the BBC has generated, the vast majority of which are free, is biblical. Now, with the best will in the world, if you can afford the device to run the app on in the first place, I think you can realistically stump up to pay for the app. And that money could be used to do actual core programming and value stuff. And if you are really upset about the idea of making a profit on the apps, then make them revenue neutral. They pay for themselves, and then it's put in the kitty to pay for more apps to do those things. Because every time that they're handing them out free, any poor sod who isn't part of the BBC trying to produce anything to compete with that, the playing field is completely and utterly against them from the moment that they kick off. And that I take issue with that. I think it is outside the BBC's remit of what they should be doing, and in the long term, it actually has quite damaging effects on the material available to us.
Well, their argument would be they've already broadcast it once back in 1967 and 1968.
Yes.
Okay.
Weirdly, I missed that. On account of being.
Sadly, I was alive, although I didn't want.
Yes, I wasn't quite born then. I'd love to see him. I would, but I sort of begrudge paying the each episode.
Well, the thing I don't like
is
to
see it on a bloody iPlayer. I don't want to watch it on an iPlayer. I want to see it on my damn telly.
It's not the iPlayer. It's exclusive to iTunes. This is what annoys me.
Yeah, it's iTunes. Yeah,
it's not iPlayer. It's iTunes.
It's iTunes.
Yeah.
Oh God, that's even worse.
Totally. I mean, this is what I don't understand. This is why I was a little bit angry when I read the story, because I thought, well, yeah, fair enough. If you're making it available to a wide range of people, then yeah, okay, and it's what you're going to make it a £1 to watch or whatever. Then okay, but anything more than that is just, I think, taking the piss.
And per episode, not the whole thing. I mean, come on.
Well, maybe they just did that in order to pay for the money they spent actually restoring it. It surely wasn't cheap.
Well, yeah, maybe not. I mean, the restoration team do an incredible job, and if you ever look at their website, and these guys are enthusiasts. They do it. Okay, they're obviously in it for the money, but I think their driving passion is to get these better than they were first broadcast. If you read any of their write-ups on any of the DVDs that they've restored, it's not about getting the BBC to pay money, because they're always up against budget, much like the show itself. They do it because they want this to be as best and as better than broadcast quality is their kind of remit, and a lot of them are. They cleaned up the first Blu-ray, wasn't it? Spearheads in Space, just a couple of months ago, was it? Incredible looking thing. I nearly reviewed. Well, in fact, I started reviewing it for the site, but my Word document smashed. I don't know what happened to it, so I thought, bloody hell. I got it 3/4 of the way done, and my Word document just died. It corrupted. I saved it one night.
The amount of times I hear these bloody excuses.
I'll send it to you, Phil, so you can open it, and then I'll finish it.
The important lesson, I suppose, is how important it is that we do, restore and save both programming and films, and that they are, saved for future generations. Because certainly before the 40s. Sorry, before the 40s, so many films have been lost forever. Certainly from the early period of cinema up to 1920s, 20s, 30s, most of the films made then have been lost forever.
But it's interesting you say that. But
it's been lost forever because of the BBC wiping tapes or other stuff just being destroyed. People didn't store things correctly and they got lost.
We're heading into the same thing now, though. We're heading into the same thing now with digital. They're using all these different digital formats. And the problem is that once you get a few years down the line, can you open the files again?
So that means that...
I mean, if you wanted something even stranger than that, how do you show historically what the early internet looked like?
Yeah, well, that's now the British Library has started to actually save web pages, isn't it? Not to actually
you just
document.
load up XP.
I mean, there are.
You laugh.
I've already lost.
Is that at university? I still run software on XP.
I'm using it. I'm using XP to participate in this podcast.
I'm using XP to record it. It's been recorded in XP. It won't work on Windows 7 because of DRM, recording Skype conversations.
So found out to our cost.
Yeah.
Scum.
No, but so it's an important lesson that we need to learn and continue to do, which is to save this stuff for future generations. And too much is already being lost. Don't make the same mistakes again. Is what
they can lose strictly.
Yeah. Fuck, they can.
I don't know. As I say, I actually last night, slightly sort of zoned and sleep deprived and paying attention to other things state, it was on in the background. So I would have counted as one of the people who watched, and I use the word loosely, Strictly Come Dancing. And I can only assume that at least half the audience must have been in the same position as me, where honestly, you could have shown me an animated test card last night and it would have made no odds.
I believe the term isn't watched, but complicit.
Yes. Yes. Although it must be said, I have always thought that I rather like Sophie Ellis-Bextor. So, I thought that was, a mild highlight. I perked up briefly during that point and sort of went back to my...
Susanna Reid's a personal favourite of mine as well. So.
My catatonic state after that. So
that's how the Nazis came to power.
Indifference.
Indifference
totally.
And sleep deprivation.
Nazis come dancing.
Now there's a show.
Better trademark that. Mark.
Yeah. Got the domain name done.
It's been done already. It's already been done. You've not seen the producers. Time for Hitler.
During a hiatus before we kicked off on this section of the podcast, I read the initial news story come through whilst I was sat in a maternity ward. Missing Doctor Who episodes found in Nigeria, and possibly because I'm a bad person, my initial thought was, had they actually found these episodes in Nigeria, or had someone emailed saying that he'd found the episodes and that for a sum of money he'd released them and we'd get to see his handiwork. But yeah, I It passed. As I understand it, we do have the article. No money has been transferred by Western Union to anywhere else. And yes, my scepticism and latent jingoism. And
it would be fantastic though if it was found by a Nigerian general.
Yeah, if you had 10 million, you couldn't get out of the country. And for 10,000, you can help him out.
I mean, for all we know, that's why we're having to pay to watch them now. Maybe the BBC did have to pay a very large sum of money to get them out. I don't know. Give them the benefit of the doubt.
Maybe we'd have found them years ago if people didn't keep deleting his emails. The next episode's been found by a penis enlargement firm.
From what I can work out for our listeners, I mean, maybe they can confirm this for us. People start listening, and I think they're sort of just wondering at what point we just degenerate. You know,
a friend of mine did point out
the
new podcasts bit light on actual technological information, isn't it? Yeah, it's a lot of mucking about mainly.
Sorry, are we supposed to do some serious shit on this? Nobody told me.
Well, I don't think you can really call it a tech podcast these days. Have you done in the trade description?
Well, you see, I think the way the format works, if anybody wants to get any information out of it, there's usually information for the first 20 minutes. You can stop listening now.
Turn off.
No, but on all seriousness, please listen to the whole thing. Okay.
And on that note...
And on that note, that is the end of the AV Forums
to the whole thing
podcast for this week. All I need to do now is thank Mark Botwright.
They're bad dudes. That's why they call the game Bad Dudes.
Simon Crust.
I wouldn't live with you if the world were flooded with piss and you lived in a tree.
Ed Selly.
Women have choices and men have responsibilities.
And Steve Withers.
My whole life is have to go. No, hang on, that's wrong.
Oh, come on, it's one line.
Well, that's because the two I was going to do, you bastards have just done.
Should have chosen a better film.
I thought it was appropriate for Ed's current predicament, to be honest. My whole life is have to.
What?
Worth the wait.
What's that?
Actually,
the thing is, Steve is doing a quote, which does in itself contain a quote, which is very zen, but quite tricky to do.
Disappearing into the Matrix.
Why not do, but they'll let any butt-reaming asshole be a father. Surely that's better than...
You obviously weren't listening.
Right, you've done that at the beginning.
Have we done that?
Yeah. Unfortunately, Steve, when you talk, everybody just tunes out.
Yeah. We should have talked about 4K this week.
How about I give them 6 months, 3 if she cooks.
Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Bookmark avforums.com for the latest reviews, news and video. Don't forget the new AV Forums is coming soon, and we'll have more information on that for you in the weeks ahead. Plus, why not leave us a rating on iTunes if you enjoyed the show. I'm Phil Hinton. Thanks very much for listening, and we promise to see you again next Wednesday.